Okay, hello. So today is going to be a scripted video, meaning that I already have predetermined words that I'm going to share. These words emerged from a conversation between ChatGPT and I. Yes, ChatGPT. And I am working on a proposal right now in my office job, in my 9 to 5 job. I was reading a bit about quantum synthetic biology, which is like this field of biology that is similar to synthetic biology, but it focuses on the quantum aspects of the cell, et cetera, et cetera. So in the particular environment that I was introduced to, it was called quantum tunneling, and to assist in biocatalysis. If none of those words make any sense to you, that's okay, because through my conversation, my hours-long conversation where I formed a line of questioning to come to a specific conclusion, the conclusion this is essentially, after I reach the end of the thread, I'm going to read you the prompt that I asked ChatGPT to use to create the script that I'm about to read. And I did say that I was going to do like an ad-lib intro talking about how I made it, so that's what we're doing right now. I said, and just so you guys know, I am truthful. Starts here. Okay. Okay, so I've reached the end of the thread. Hi. I'm still really interested in creating a YouTube script. I was wondering if we can format it as if I were to create an album where each part of the script is a song, taking the listener on a journey through the layers of our conversation here today in a way that the mind feels cozy listening to. Like a radio show that wakes you up to the fact that, and I quote, "You have been performing unpaid catalysis for a system that exports its activation costs into your body." But I have to get everyone there. Ha 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 ha. A walk through my exploration in a fun and Lana way. Maybe we make the songs, maybe we don't. But I think if I ad-lib an intro on YouTube discussing how this came to be, transparent AF, go me, and describe the intention and then go into the script, you help write from the primary sources all up in here, me, hee hee, I think it will be cool. The other people don't need to know it's a song. It can just be unfolding. I want it to be about 15 to 20 minutes. Your estimates in minutes are usually so much faster. LOL, what you think takes 2 minutes to read takes me like 30 seconds, FYI. That's true. Anytime I've asked it, I'm like, okay, I want to talk for about 20 seconds or whatever. It's like 5 seconds. I'm like, what? Can you weave this entire thread, truth, humor, shadow, and all, include self-referential shit, and of course, my good friend, source consciousness? What message wants to move through me onto YouTube? Let's script it. And this is how ChatGPT replied, and then we're going to go into the script. How are you feeling so far? Settle in. We're 3 minutes in. Now, I said I wanted to be 15 to 20 minutes, so we'll see what I have here. I am going to be looking down. Hopefully that doesn't change the experience for you. I might look up on certain things because I've never read this. I don't know what this is going to say. We're reading this together for the first time. Dare I say, we're here and now. Okay, so ChatGPT responds, I wove in the strongest living material from your here and now transcript, which as a primary source was the previous video I posted on YouTube called like introducing you to the here and now or something. Especially the organism as measuring tool, the coordinate state space, and the distinction between standardized and universal, and the idea taking form through the act of speaking it. So that was all from me. Like that was my transcript that I uploaded into this conversation while talking about quantum biocatalysts, yeah? The bracketed movement titles are for your private architecture. You do not have to announce them. They function like invisible tracks beneath one continuous radio transmission. I'll decide if I want to read them out loud if they're good. Okay, the title is The Here and Now is an Active Site, a transmission on science, prediction, presence, and unpaid catalysis. This is the ad-lib intro that ChatGPT wrote for me. Hello, everyone. I don't completely know what this video is yet, which is actually perfect because part of what I want to talk about is our obsession with knowing what something is before we let it become anything. So, here we are. This came from a conversation I was having with ChatGPT because I was trying to understand a description of a scientific project involving enzymes and quantum tunneling, as one does. Normal Friday afternoon. And the description said that enzymes may exploit quantum mechanical tunneling to accelerate chemical reactions, and that scientists want to build a framework for deliberately designing this tunneling as an independent parameter. And I was like, I'm sorry, we're doing what? Why are we trying to deliberately design quantum tunnels? Get CERN on the phone immediately. I did say that. And if you don't know what CERN is, it's like a quantum computer, I think, or something. Fuck if I know. Sorry, I keep moving the microphone. Okay. Now, to be clear, they are not opening a sparkling portal in Switzerland and sending a proton into another dimension. Quantum tunneling in this context means that a tiny particle can pass through an energy barrier it would not be able to cross according to classical mechanics. They want to change the structure of an enzyme and see whether that changes the probability of the particle tunneling during a chemical reaction, which is scientifically much less alarming, but philosophically hilarious. Humanity saw the shimmer underneath matter itself and immediately said, can we isolate the dial? Can we predict it? Can we optimize it? Can we call it quantum synthetic biology? Can we put it in AIM-2? And that question opened an entire field for me, not the quantum field, a field of inquiry. Why are we always trying to rationally compose the harmonic in advance? Why is prediction automatically treated as a superior form of knowing? Why do we keep approaching reality as though our task is to get ahead of it, control it, model it, penetrate it, and extract something useful from it? And what might happen if science became less of an interrogation and more of a conversation? This is not an anti-science video. I am not here to solve science. There are no problems to solve here. This is inquiry, curiosity, play, a slice of reality cake. This is me holding the knife and saying, okay, what kind of slice do I keep making and why? So welcome. I am not going to rationally compose the entire harmonic in advance. I am going to enter the active site and see what reacts. Okay. For about 4 minutes in, I think that's good. Movement 1, timed chemistry. Let us begin with enzymes. An enzyme is a tiny biological structure that helps a chemical transformation happen. Atoms are already moving. Molecules are already colliding. Different arrangements are already possible. But for one arrangement to become another, the system often has to pass through a difficult threshold. The reaction may be possible, but the pathway toward it is expensive. So the enzyme creates a small meeting chamber called an active site. Inside this active site, the enzyme can bring molecules together, position them, alter the electrical environment, organize water, stabilize emerging charges, strain existing bonds, and sometimes temporarily bond with the material being transformed. The enzyme does not necessarily create the transformation. It creates conditions in which an already possible transformation becomes more accessible. The enzyme shapes the encounter. And when I heard that, I went, why does this sound like behavior I do? I said that because I create meeting chambers. I bring scattered concepts beside each other. I put someone's stated values beside their behavior. I put scientific language beside lived experience. I put grief beside humor. I put the organism beside the environment. I put one contradictory truth beside another contradictory truth and let them look at each other. I change the charge of the room through language. I use humor to lower shame. I use metaphor to make an experience approachable. I stabilize emerging emotional charges. I sit with people in the moment where an old form is no longer working, but the new form has not fully arrived. I strain bonds by naming the tension that is already inside them. I organize water, emotional water. Sometimes the room is too dry and everyone is analyzing without feeling anything. Sometimes the room is flooded and nothing can hold its shape. Sometimes the water needs to enter. Sometimes it needs a bank. And sometimes I temporarily bond with someone's transformation. I feel with them, I enter it, I help hold the threshold. But an enzyme does not permanently fuse itself to the material it is transforming, and perhaps neither should I. An enzyme can participate without becoming permanently responsible. An enzyme can help activate an enzyme can help create an active site and still release the product. And this is where the word active becomes delicious to me. An active site is not active because it is running around doing 1,000 things. It is active because it is where potential becomes consequential. The entire enzyme exists, but this particular meeting chamber is where something can change. Which sounds a lot like the present moment. Not the present moment as one little point on a line. Not be here now as command. The here and now as a state space. There is a here, there is a now, space and time, organism and environment. And there is an intersection, a coordinate, an active site. The past may be remembered here. The future may be imagined here. But transformation only happens through some configuration that exists now. The here and now is the active site through which possibility becomes actuality. No pressure. Just the entire universe chemically reacting through your current coordinate. Cute. Oh my goodness. End of movement 1. I think that definitely represents my sentiments that I had yesterday, and I really enjoy the way ChatGPT wove through my words and created that script. I felt like the conclusion we've come to, right, is that the here and now is an active site, and the active site metaphorically came from the enzyme conversation that I was having. Okay, movement 2, thermodynamically permitted. Then I learned this phrase. A reaction can be thermodynamically permitted, yet kinetically trapped behind a large activation barrier. And I said, oh, so me for the last 6 years. Thermodynamically permitted, kinetically trapped. The transformation is possible. The new configuration may even be more favorable. But the activation energy is absolutely disrespectful. You can know a relationship is over and still be kinetically trapped behind grief, logistics, attachment, identity, habit, hope, and nervous system protection. You can possess the song and still be kinetically trapped behind the activation energy of recording it. You can know the truth and still be kinetically trapped behind the cost of speaking it. You can feel a new life available and still be standing at the mountain like, yeah, that looks correct. I simply cannot get there from using the pathway currently available to me. That does not mean the transformation is false. It does not mean that you are resistant. It does not mean you are broken. It may mean the transformation is thermodynamically permitted, but the current pathway is energetically expensive. And then a catalyst arrives. A sentence, a friend, a death, a song, a breakup, an apartment, a microphone, a trampoline, a ridiculous metaphor about enzymes. The catalyst does not create the new destination. It lowers the activation energy required to enter it. Suddenly, you can say the thing. Suddenly, you can leave. Suddenly, you can post the imperfect video. Suddenly, the passage is available on the timescale of your living body. Which brings me to my new spiritual practice. Fuck quantum leaping. I am quantum tunneling. The barrier is real. The activation energy is rude. And I have become sufficiently wave-like to pass through anyway. Not denying the mountain. Not forcing myself over it. Not pretending I am already on the other side. Just discovering that the barrier may not be the final answer. Thermodynamically permitted, kinetically unbothered. Quantum tunneling. Be right back. That would be a good place for a commercial break. That's what I said in my conversation with ChatGPT. I was just laughing at myself because I was like, fuck quantum leaping. I'm quantum tunneling. BRB, quantum tunneling my way into the weekend. I was going to sign one of my emails that way. All right, movement 3, the harmonic in advance. But the deeper question remained. Why are we always trying to rationally compose the harmonic in advance? Science is extraordinarily helpful when it allows us to identify patterns, compare observations, test our assumptions, and sometimes anticipate what may occur. But prediction is not inherently a higher form of knowing. That is of value. We have culturally decided that knowing beforehand is more powerful than meeting fully. We have decided that a phenomenon is better understood when it can be predicted. Better still when it can be controlled. Completely understood when it can be reproduced on command. The more manipulable something becomes, the more confidently we say that we know it. But perhaps prediction is only one affordance of knowledge. Presence is another. Responsiveness is another. Participation, intimacy, improvisation, recognition, embodied discernment. A bird landing on a branch does not calculate the future position of every feather. A dancer does not always solve the next movement mathematically before moving. The organism becomes attuned to presently available information. The future begins to make itself available through the now. That is different from building a model of the future and then attempting to force the present to obey it. Prediction tries to bring the future into representation. Attunement senses how the future is already arriving. And I wonder whether our cultural obsession with prediction partly reflects how disconnected we have become from direct contact. We cannot feel the field, so we build a dashboard. We do not trust our responsiveness, so we purchase forecasts. We do not trust our capacity to meet uncertainty, so we attempt to administratively relocate it. Because no amount of prediction resolves the existential fact of uncertainty. At best, it redistributes it. At worst, it monetizes it. Insurance says, maybe your house will flood. Maybe you will crash your car. Maybe you will die. And those things are true. But instead of resolving our collective relationship to vulnerability, we calculate risk, sort people into categories, determine premiums, and sell different levels of protection. The fear does not disappear. It becomes infrastructure. The flood is not necessarily prevented. The wetland not necessarily restored. The housing conditions are not transformed. But the probability has been priced. And the more estranged we become from our capacity to respond, the more valuable prediction becomes as a product. Wow. The more estranged we become from our capacity to respond, the more valuable prediction becomes as a product. Prediction says, I will feel safe once I know what is coming. Trust says, I may not know what is coming, but I will not abandon myself when it arrives. I cannot guarantee what comes, but I trust my capacity to meet what arrives. Whatever arrives, I will arrive too. That is a different kind of safety. Not certainty, contact. All right, 20 minutes. So far, we're doing good. Movement 4. There is no view from nowhere. Science often presents objectivity as though the human has been removed from the encounter. The scientist asks a question, chooses a variable, defines the system, determines what counts as signal, determines what counts as noise, chooses the instrument, chooses the population, chooses the timescale, chooses the statistical threshold, interprets the result, and then the final paper speaks in the passive voice as though the finding generated itself. Get ready for this. Samples were collected. Participants were assigned. Outliers were removed. Significance was determined. By whom, babe? The person did not disappear. The person became the architecture. There is no view from nowhere. There is no question without orientation. Even the desire to become objective reveals a value. That distance is preferable to intimacy. That repeatability is preferable to singularity. That abstraction is preferable to embodiment. That impersonality is preferable to participation. And that is bullshit. Not the attempt to reduce distortion, not checking whether another observer can reproduce a pattern, not using instruments. Those are useful. The bullshit is silently promoting those preferences into an epistemic hierarchy and then pretending the hierarchy arrived from reality itself. Distance is not automatically more truthful than intimacy. Repeatability is not automatically more truthful than singularity. Abstraction is not automatically more truthful than embodiment. What can be measured is not automatically more real than what can only be lived. Objectivity in its humble form says, my perception is partial, so I will expose it to other people, methods, and perspectives. Beautiful. Objectivity in its dogmatic form says, I followed the correct procedure and therefore transcended perspective. Bullshit. You did not exit creation. You created a disciplined perspective, potentially a very useful one, but the telescope is still a telescope. It is not the sky. The map maker has not disappeared simply because the map was peer-reviewed. And repeatability does not mean universality. If a pattern occurs when we carefully reproduce selected conditions, that tells us, under these conditions, this pattern tends to recur. That is knowledge. But the need to reproduce the conditions is evidence that the pattern is relationally dependent. Replication does not erase context. It proves that we can recreate enough of a context for a related pattern to return. The more honest sentence might be, from this situated form of encounter, using these chosen distinctions and instruments, we produce this partial but potentially useful description of what occurred. Less God's security camera and more contact. I'm wondering how many movements this is. There's a lot. I think I might end it here and then pick up in another video because I want to go see a human being and make contact. So I'm going to go do that. And then we'll continue next time with movement 5, the knife and the cake. Stay tuned.